Hey everyone, welcome to Delivered, where we talk about everything related to building successful businesses and digital products. I'm the new guy. My name is Georgios Athanasiadis. I'm the managing director and founder of Your Majesty, a company that's now part of Infinum, and I'm going to be your host. And today we're going to talk about something that I'm actually really excited about, AI agents, and if they are the future of hiring. I mean, I can't live without ChatGPT anymore. Like every time my ChatGPT goes down, I'm having a slight panic attack. So it's definitely kind of like touched every part of my life so far. And the next thing now is AI agents, which I'm not as familiar with, but lucky me, because I have an AI expert with me today. Today, we're going to talk with Ivan Burazin, who is the CEO and co-founder of Daytona, which is a fast-growing startup that provides secure infrastructure for running AI-generated code. His vision with Daytona is to make software development more accessible, efficient, and enjoyable for developers of all backgrounds. I think we should just bring him in. Let's bring in Ivan.
Hey there.
What's up?
Just hanging around, waiting for you, I guess.
Yeah, what's up, Ivan? Welcome to the show. Where do this live stream find you today?
I usually live in an airplane. People ask me where I am. Currently, I am in Croatia, so I'm in sunny Split, which is great. And then tomorrow, fly back to San Francisco.
Oh, very cool. So I think we should just get straight to it. Tell us about yourself and your career and how you ended up creating Daytona.
Sure. Career has been a long one. I'll date myself probably with this. So first company was building server rooms. So actual HP, IBM servers, routers, networks, stuff like that in the early 2000s. After that, sold that company, did the very first browser-based IDE, so basically in your browser that you can code, which is like a very normal thing today. Now you don't even have to type code; it's basically vibe coding. But in 2009, that was very, very new, like very first one in the world. So we had to create a lot of infrastructure things on our own, primitives because they didn't exist. After that, did a developer conference, which was quite successful. So about 4,000 people attend the conference. That got acquired by a company called Infobip, which is this very, very large communications platform as a service, basically an API that enables developers to send SMS, WhatsApp, email, and whatnot. And after that, I left to start Daytona, which is a agent-native runtime company. Basically, what that means is that we enable AI agents to not only execute code, but do various tasks. If you think of an agent as like a human worker, which we're probably going to talk about today, we are equivalent to their laptop, something like that.
Okay, so it's like, okay, cool. So it's like a cage where you can put it in and let it do its thing, and it will keep in the cage.
So actually, it is basically the agent is running somewhere, and then the agent can invoke basically a Daytona, what we call a runtime or a sandbox. And anything done in that is a cage. So you can think about it, you as a human probably have one laptop, but an agent can have like a lot of them because it can break them, because agents are not that sophisticated. And so you can imagine a younger child giving you a laptop, they'll probably break it at some point or do something. And so in that manner, we can spin these up quite fast. There's more to do there than just make sure it doesn't do anything malicious, although that is one of the themes of that. But there's things like, in the sense of an agent, unlike humans, can work on the same thing in parallel multiple times. So if you have a task, you're going to try to solve it in one way, coding task or mathematical task, whatever it may be. You're going to try to solve it one way. If it's wrong, you'll do another. If it's wrong, you'll do another. An agent can basically say, oh, this is my machine, and I'm going to make it 5 times, and then try 5 in parallel, right? And say, oh, number 2 is not bad, number 4 is not bad, let's take that. Or they're all garbage, let's roll back. Or number 1 is great, let's just take that. So there's more things to that we offer to AI agents, in the sense of like, also AI agents sometimes need a browser, sometimes they need a desktop to actually, test out applications, whatnot. And so we offer that to the agent specifically.
Very cool. So I think we're already jumping into the deep end. So if we back up a little bit and onboard people like myself or people that are newer to the topic, and starting with a simpler question. So, like, what are AI agents? How do they work? And what's the difference between the LLMs and the generative AI tools that we use today, like the ChatGPTs and Claudes of this world? How would you explain the terminology between these things?
Sure. There's lots of definitions and it's all over the place. And so basically, the way I sort of describe it is an agent is a piece of software that on one end is connected to a large language model, so OpenAI, Anthropic, or whatever, and on
Yeah.
the other side is connected to tools, and the agent itself is the software that connects those two and communicates with the end user. So that, for an example, like ChatGPT is a agent, but OpenAI is a model company. So they have the OpenAI platform. So Anthropic, if you go to anthropic.com, you have access to the model. If you go to Claude, you have access to their agent, which is a piece of software that uses their model in there. And so I'm happy to go into more details, but basically the idea is, can you communicate with this service, this agent, and can it solve a problem or an outcome or a question on its own?
Okay, so basically, so if I would compare that to how I'm using ChatGPT, it's like in ChatGPT, I will write a prompt, have it respond to me, and then I will write it the next instruction, and then it will feedback. And my is this that it could go, you give it a task, and then it will do the separate steps without interference?
So the way I think about that, so ChatGPT is an agent specifically. So let's try to break that down. So
Yeah,
ChatGPT, you go to chatgpt.com, you see like a web service or a mobile app, whatever it may
yeah,
be. That interface, that piece of software that is created is the agent. People think that that is the brain, but it actually isn't. The brain is the model, the large language model in
yeah,
this case, which is running somewhere else. So if you think of, we can do mobile apps, which make it easier. You install the ChatGPT app on your phone, and that is
yeah,
an agent. But the model is not on your phone. It actually has to connect to a model to get the answer. So the way it works on a more technical level is you prompt it. You prompt the agent, not the model. You prompt the agent. The agent takes that data. It's connected, or your prompt. It's connected to the model. It sends it to the model. The model is basically the brain, and the model comes back with an answer. It's like, so you can
yeah,
say, oh, what is 1 + 2, whatever it may be, or what's the capital of, London? And if it has that knowledge, it will reply with the knowledge, and then you as a user will see that, and then you will either be happy with the answer or it will stop. The reason I say an agent invokes tool calling is because that was a very, very first, what I would just explained is basically everything that the agent does is basically in the model's brain. So when you work in that fashion, you say, oh, what is the percentage difference between 256 and 100,000? I'm making up numbers. The agent on its own, without invoking a tool call, will send it to the model. The model will try to solve it in its brain, basically like we would in high school. It will write out the entire
hmm,
formula to get to the answer, which is like not efficient, because the way we work today is you open up a calculator app and you like type in the numbers and you get the outcome. It's like super fast, super easy, super cheap, all those things. And so an agent today basically can talk to a model, but it can talk to tools. So it doesn't have to go to a model for every single solution, or even the model mid solution can say, oh, it's like a mathematical equation. I'm using calculator as a simple one. Let's just call a calculator app, type in the numbers, get the answer, and then continue on. So very much like a human, as I said earlier, agents, you can think about them as sort of like knowledge workers, because a human in today's world is also a brain, a human that is connected to a laptop that's producing some sort of work that someone has input them to do, right? Your boss, your colleague, your client has sent you a prompt, which is a question and ask, whatever, request for service. And you have gone, at least in the digital world, and opened up your laptop and started solving that problem and then coming up with a solution.
okay, cool. So is there a difference? So I've heard a lot of people throwing around these terms. They say AI agents, and then they describe something like operator by ChatGPT. And I've also heard people saying agentic AI. Is that the same word, or is that
Yeah, so
just a
basically,
different version?
there's a lot of words, Gen AI, agentic AI, whatever. The words that basically AI itself, the people who want to talk about AI are usually referencing large language models. The two, Anthropic and OpenAI, are the most prominent. XAI from Twitter and
Yep.
whatnot. There's much more of them. And so if you think of them, the models again on their own are nothing without, basically, let's take a step back. When people started thinking about AI is when they got their hands on ChatGPT.
Yep.
All the models existed for ChatGPT before we had ChatGPT. Like it existed. But you as a human could not interface with that model easily. The APIs were there. You could have done it. I could have done it. I didn't. But until someone created an agent, it ended up being OpenAI also did the agent, but it could have been anyone else. That was the interface to the human. So basically, the key thing is the agent interfaces with the human and the model and with the rest of the world. And so it's like a three-prong type of thing where at one end there's a human, one end there's a model, the other end there's tools. And if you think of Operator specifically, so Operator, for those of you who don't know, it's a service from OpenAI, and it can like open a web browser and click on things and like book your dinner in San Francisco. And so that is a tool. So in the sense of it's the same agent, so it's still ChatGPT is the agent, but what it has access to is a tool, and the tool is a browser. And so in this case, ChatGPT now has the ability to not just solve problems in its head and write out textual prompts. It now has access to a browser, a computer with a browser, and then it can go and click on that. And Daytona, something that we do, we also enable other companies to build things like Operator, because we offer that computer, including a browser, for people, or sorry, for agents to be able to do these things. Because without it, if you have ChatGPT without that access, it really can't go out and book a restaurant dinner for you and your partner tonight, because it doesn't have access to the rest of the world. It's locked inside of ChatGPT. When you give it a browser, it can do everything that human does. Now, does it do it good or bad? That we can get into that later. But without having the ability, the tool to be able to do that, it can't actually go and do that. And the way I like to think about, to tell people what tools are for agents, is like, imagine you have your staff and you take everyone's computers away and tell them to get their job done. It would be very, very hard in our world. Like if you're, and I'm not saying anything bad, but if you're a farmer, probably you can do that. But if you're a digital agency, if you remove everyone's computers, they're not going to get much done, right? In that same
I would
manner,
be out of a job.
yeah. In that same manner, agents, if they don't have the tool, that machine, they can't do that either.
Yep. Gotcha. Okay, getting clear. So you already you touched on it, what it can do and what it's good at and what its limitations. So how autonomous are the AI agents you're working on with Daytona at the moment? And what do they excel at, and what do they bump their toes with?
So there's a lot of limitations right now. So basically, what we'll see in the media is there a lot of hype. It's like, oh, there will be no more software developers. Oh, all these things are dead. Oh, look at this new demo. We talked about this earlier. Oh, there's a new demo about something. It comes up, and demos are demos, and so they work really well in sort of like a boxed scenario. And then when you let them out in the wild, they're not that good. Not to say that agents don't have value right now, but they are really, really good at like small, short, narrow, repetitive tasks that they obviously can handle. They can interact with, and they are very bad at long-term planning, at long taking tasks, so and unstructured problems. So an unstructured problem is usually very hard for humans to solve, let alone agents to solve. And I'll give you an example. When I was working at my former company, the task was create a meetup in a foreign city. That's a task, and make it successful. So there are a bunch of unknowns there. So one is what date, what city, what location, how many people. Oh, they're all unknown, but the task is to make it good and solve that, right? And so that's hard for the average human, because we all, especially in large organizations, a lot of things are either defined or constrained. So they're either defined by the input of the buyer, user, whatever, or they are constrained by whatever, right? So easier task would that be is like, oh, I want a meetup in New York on May 29th in a bar. And then so the more I give you of these things, the easier the task is, right? And so that is what agents are really good at, is like, if you can clearly define exactly what you want, and you just want them to go out and do the thing, that's amazing. And that's what they do really well. But the more obscure the task and the longer it has to run, the worse it is. And I'd actually say it can't actually solve any of these tasks at any scale at the moment.
So, okay, cool. So, can you give some? I mean, you just gave a short-term example. What's a longer example like that it would have a difficult problem with?
So anything that takes a long time is pretty hard because one, it usually fills up the context window. So it's like, oh, if I'll take like coding examples because it's just easier. Is like,
Yeah.
if you have a very, very large task that you have to do that will take like a normal engineer like days or whatever it was, that's going to be very hard for an agent to do, to solve successfully. And just because it has to figure out the whole context of what's going on and the way models work, basically they sort of try to ingest everything if they can and then try to figure things out. And there it usually breaks. I have yet to try a autonomous coding agent, so it's an AI agent that codes, and say, oh, here's this, not even super complex, here's the documentation of our service, and now I want you like remove these things, add these things, and go off and do that. That is really, really hard. It's never been successful. But something that does really, really well is if you have this, even if you have like a very large product, think, you're working in Ericsson or Bank of America or whatever it is,
Yep.
and you're using, Twilio for messaging. So you have an API endpoint, which is like Twilio's. And now you want to switch that out with someone else's, like another service. That is something that humans really don't like to do, because there's going to be like hundreds of places where this is connected. This endpoint that you have to change, the credentials you have to change, all these things. Humans really don't like doing that. And agents are fantastic at doing that because it's the same exact task repeated multiple times. So when you think about what an agent is good at, is like, is it something repeatable, short, concrete? You can send it
Yeah.
off and do that. But if it's something very large and have to think about, and it takes long loops or long iterations to do things, it's going to be really
Yeah.
bad to do that.
So if I understand it correctly, then, so if you have a really tight brief, or like, it's like updating data entry of several different fields in a database, it's good at that if you can brief it very clearly on what you expect from it. Bad if you need to ask it to reason about the problem, figure it out, and then maybe try different things, bump its toes, reason why, and then try to solve it in another way.
Exactly. For at the moment, right now, even when you try, so ChatGPT, again, as an agent, we can use that. When you give it like a very complex thing that you have to do, I doubt it will actually solve the problem. But what it can do is, like, if you can sub-scope some of the elements of the task, it'll go out
Yeah.
and do that. And then you as a human have to like first verify that what they did is actually good. And if it's actually good, then you can sort of incorporate that back into the original content. So I'll give you something very useful, I think, for most people, or very understandable. If you tell an agent, oh, I want to write a blog post, like a long form blog post about, whatever, solar energy, I'm making it up. And the more technical, the harder. And use deep research, find all this data, and write me an interesting article. You can even say, use the style of whatever author you really like.
Yeah.
That it will create it, but it'll actually be pretty garbage. It's going to be really wide and shallow. It won't go into deep ends. Like, it's not actually really good at that. But what I can tell it to do is like, oh, find me the data of whatever I need about like how many solar panels there are, how much of the energy is being created, how much energy do we need. It'll feed these things back to me. And then I can basically write out an article, which will be crappy. Like, my grammar's bad, whatever. And then I can like pull out sections of that article and say, oh, now that this is like the form of the article, can you like change the tone without, or fix the grammar or whatever without editing it? Or can you read this back to me and tell me what you understand and what it didn't come off well? And so those narrow tasks where the answers are really short, those
Yeah.
things are that's where agents are really useful. And it does save you mountains of time, right? So if you are going to do a article right now where you have to do all the research, write the article, do the proofreading and all these things, that would take you a really long time, like probably a week of your time because you have other things to do. But now if you're doing that, you might do it like in a Saturday, maybe a Saturday and Sunday, and it'll be like a high quality article that you'll get out of that.
Yeah. I mean, how I use it now is to, like how you're describing it. It's like I start with asking it to do a research on the type of questions or the problems that I want to have answered. And then I do another pass, basically prompt it again with those questions to figure out the answers. As long as you kind of like direct it in the order that it needs to get things done, the quality of the output becomes a lot better. So, I mean, it seems we're keeping it quite like a theoretical and high level, but it's like, what, I mean, you're right in it, right? You're also based in San Francisco. So what's your kind of like favorite real world examples of AI agents in the wild right now? What are you currently super excited about?
Well, I'm actually, so I'll change the question a bit. I'm more excited about
Yeah.
the net new use cases. And so the example people talk about, and I'll use the same example, is I think there's very few agent native, if we can use that term, services right now that exist outside
Mm-hmm.
of like ChatGPT and whatnot. And why I say that is like the first like mobile native services that could not exist are like DoorDash and Uber and like
Yeah.
whatever, like these things that needed GPS location and communication at the same time did not exist, could not exist until you actually had, mobile. And so the agent native companies are just being built or about to be built or whatnot. And I find that is the most exciting because right now what we're doing is basically porting all old technologies with this new AI flavor. Basically the same way we ported, it's not exact, but like Windows for on mobile. For those of you that remember, there's like Windows CE, which is like it
Yeah.
was literally you had like the Windows Start button. It was like not mobile ready. It was just like Windows on a small screen. And the web was on a small screen and everything was on a small screen, and that was it. It wasn't utilizing what these things are. And I see most things being created right now, or most things being used, is just like AI fairy dust, which is like, oh, I have a SaaS product or whatever it is, and can I just add like this chat bar and now it's going to reply answers and whatever, which I don't
Yeah.
think is actually AI native in the sense of like, is it actually doing things as it should be? And so, like, some of the things I've heard of and I haven't been using, and there's some of them our customers are well, outside of just like building like coding platforms, is so there's like an AI native Notion competitor. So basically, it is like a Notion, which is like a service that you can type things
Yep.
in. It has that data and whatnot in there. And so what they have in the background is they also use us. Users won't know that why they have us is because you can actually tell the Notion competitor, the product itself, is like, oh, thank you for this data. Can you now just draw out an analysis or run some, crunch these? You can actually ask it to crunch numbers. And then it spins up a Daytona instance in the background to be able to crunch these numbers and gives you the output. Like, it's not a AI chatbot on top of Notion. It is like trying to fundamentally change that. That might not be the best, but it's just, this is what I'm seeing where people are actually trying to find out what are the net new things that can be created now that AI exists and agents are a thing. And what I'm seeing is, so Y Combinator, one of the most famous accelerators in the
Yep.
world, they put out the numbers. 37% of this batch, so they have about 200 companies per batch, 37% are agents. And I think that's actually quite profound because the way people understand agents for the most part is ChatGPT, Claude, and that's it. There's no more like that's it. Like, they're the companies in the sense of like Google is search and these are agents. But depends on how far we go, and we can talk about this. We talked about this earlier. Like, depends how do we
Yeah.
get to singularity or do we not get to singularity? These agents that they have are just like, to an extent, general purpose. They're not specific tools for a specific use case. And I think the way forward and what is happening is that all new software are actually going to be agents. So agents for whatever X they're trying to achieve. And if we get these new software paradigms similar to what we had mobile paradigms, I think that is where things get really exciting. And I don't think we've seen anything yet at massive scale that is an AI, an agent native sort of product.
Okay, so it's gonna be like you mentioned Uber before, where everybody is in venture capital said it's Uber for X. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's Uber for laundry, or it's Uber for food, or it's Uber for this. So it's gonna
So in the
everybody
sense
now
of
saying,
to a degree, right? It's like not everything is like delivery and having thing coming to you, but basically
yeah,
what the technology enables you to do. Because before you had you maybe had a laptop. Some people had laptops, but it didn't have a nonstop internet connection. Didn't have a GPS inside of that. So like Uber wasn't
hmm,
possible to create. I just use that because it's the most common one. But there's so many
yep,
things in mobile that are now used that cannot be used anywhere else or could not be created if mobile didn't exist. And so if you now have if your product is now an AI agent, how much more, what are the things that we can now achieve that we couldn't do with like, let's call it dynamic applications, but they weren't agentic applications, hence the word agentic, right? So the applications we have now are not static. They can change, they can do things, but they cannot work for you. They do not provide services themselves, right?
gotcha. So next question I have is like, okay, so you got me bought into AI agents. So on this call, there's a lot of like different people from different type of sectors. Um, who should be adopting AI agents and why? I mean, like I guess the answer is everyone, but which ones are the most relevant to get to in the short to near term, and which sectors do you think should jump on this right now, and are there anything that's just complete hyperbole at the moment that we should
So one thing I think, depending on your audience, and so I'm doing this because Infinitum is like a digital agency that builds digital products, and so I'll
yep,
add that in here first, which I don't think most people appreciate. I nodded to this earlier, whereas some people should actually build agents. So a lot of people should build agents actually, not just use agents in the sense of um, before, and so I'm assume customers of Infinum and similar companies are like, oh, we need this
hmm,
piece of software, and it could be internal, but I believe for the most part it's external. It's like, so we need a mobile app for our brand, we need a web service for whatever we do. Like, I don't know, like you're
yep,
selling tires, so you need a web shop or whatever it may be. I'm simplifying it, and
yep,
that is great. And I believe, unless we hit singularity, that in the near term, we will, your customers or customers of Infinite or people that are building it will actually be building AI agents instead of these CRUD applications that have been creating historically. Or CRUD applications will still exist, but you will be building agents itself. So I like challenge everyone to also think about, can I build an agent specifically, right? Obviously, you'll take things off the shelf, and examples are, a lot of people use Salesforce or similar applications. Very few
yep,
people try to build Salesforce. The few that I know that have internally, because Salesforce wasn't good enough, like just dumped that away and ended up just using it off the shelf. But all these companies do not exist yet. Like the agent native winners do not exist yet for a specific vertical. So can your company, one, build the winner in that, or two, can my, whatever me, I mean, I'm selling tires. Can I create an agent to do
hmm,
X? And so I'm not sure it makes sense for tires. Don't know. But what I'm trying to challenge people is like, you should start thinking about, can you create agents to help your company both internally and externally to help your customers? And I think that is like a fundamental thing that people don't think about, like that you can actually build an agent. There's a lot of tools and a lot of frameworks that allow you to do that, but also there's a lot of companies like Infinum, and I'm not trying to plug you on purpose, but it just makes sense that companies like this can offer not just like a web app and a mobile app, but also an agent app, just using that word, but like an agent itself. So that would be the first thing that I would call on before getting into what agent specifically you should use.
gotcha. But so then if we continue with the tire example, so tire app or tire website, I have something where I can order new tires or schedule a replacement or a check or whatever. Um, and I want to get into the agentic evolution of my business. What's the measure of success? Is that efficiency, or what is it I should
It depends on what you're
try
interested
to,
in. And
yeah,
so if you look
yeah,
at, so I'm making this up on the fly, to be honest. So don't, people watching this, listening to this,
same.
don't hate on me because of that. So like if you go into, I was changing my tires recently. That's why I came up. And so if you look at the
Love it.
number of people that are typing in information when I'm changing my tires, there's like, there was like, in the place that I was, there was like 6 people on 6 computers, like logging me in, writing this information in, doing this, like saying your car's over there. All of that could be an agent, like all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Why? It's very structured, repetitive task. My car is that
Yep.
car. It has that number. It has those tires. That is it. Have I paid or not paid? Like all of those things could actually be agents, perhaps not to the customer, but certainly for the productivity of the company internally, which gets to the point of like, will agents replace us or whatnot? But generally, as a owner of this business, it is more beneficial to have the people actually changing the tires or changing more tires than having people that have to type in these things, which are very repetitive but not perfectly repetitive. So you can't use like an RPA because it's not exactly the same because different people come with different cars, different whatever. But an agent is smart enough to do
Can you
that.
clarify what the RPA is?
So
Quickly?
it's basically automation that people have existed for a long time, where you can basically record a set of steps and then the
Yeah,
bot can do the same thing over and over again, right?
gotcha.
Where an agent does a better version of that, or better words depend on the use case. Agent can get it wrong, but agent can adapt to different scenarios, right? It's like, oh, what's your car? And you'll say your car. What's your tires? It's like, oh, he already knows the tires because it can look up what tires I had originally, or it's in the paperwork or whatnot. So it can do all these things automated and just say, okay, leave your keys, whatever. Someone will come in an hour and your car will be done, right? So what are the things that you actually do not like doing is probably the best place to look at where to use agents. So what is a job that I have to do every single day that's repetitive, mostly boring, not intellectually, intensive? And most of that can today, if not completely, start to be automated with an agent, either off the shelf or being built out.
Gotcha. So, and what's the stuff that it's not, which I should not let it do so far? So,
So
if
it
that
depends
it's
on
good
how
to do those
risky,
things.
depends on how risky you want to be. So like all of these things, agents hallucinate. Again, someone said the other day, humans hallucinate as well. So, humans screw up as well. So agents do. But unlike other technologies, it's not deterministic. So in the sense of like, it won't be the same every single time, even if it has to be the same
Yeah.
every single time. So there are things that you still might need people to, look over or whatnot. But in the same vein, people that Waymo, the self-driving car company, I've ridden it a few times in San Francisco. And the way I understand it, it's mostly self-driving, but you still have remote drivers if something messes up, right? So you don't need
Hmm.
one driver per every car. You need one driver per X cars, which is still way more efficient than having that because it's much easier to do that. In the same vein, you'll probably need someone to look through if it's sensitive data, if it's not sensitive, depend. And as we mentioned earlier as well, like you ask it to do some deep research, but you probably should,
Yep.
if you don't, like double check the references because it could be wrong, right? But you're just checking
Yep.
references. It's like, oh, reference numbers, good. Okay, I'm gone. I don't
Yeah,
have
but
to
that's
read the
something I
rest,
would
right?
do with a junior employee anyway, right?
Exactly.
Or like
Exactly.
yeah. So
Exactly.
just quick, would you say that Waymo cars are agents?
So I don't know, like they're AI, and are they an agent? So you could
Yeah.
define it, and you're catching me on the spot. Like, one, is there interface with a human? Yes. Two, does it have
Yeah.
access to tools, which is a car? And the tool is the
Hmm.
car. Yes. Is it connected to a model? It's a different model than an LLM, as far as I know, but like model, yes. So your definition would be that it's an AI agent. Yes. Under that definition, it would fall.
That's cool. So if we continue, we bought in. I'm just gonna go with this tire company reference now since we
Yeah,
started
I
it.
wish I didn't do the tire
Um,
company. I should have done something else. Yeah.
it's going downhill. No.
Yeah, it's going downhill from here for
So
sure.
how can like companies like a tire company or any other organization get AI ready? What do I need to put in place? Like, or do I just get a company like Infinum or Daytona to like, hey, let's start building agentic software, and what do I need to have in place for it to be, or increase my chance of success?
I'm not sure if this is the right way to think about it, but this is how I think about it. Unlike, so I don't know if you've seen the numbers, and people are doing what you're saying. And so I think it was like Accenture, one of these big consulting companies, made whatever it was like a stupid number, like 10 billion last year on consulting on AI. It was like
Yeah.
insane. Like the most money anyone has made, it was the consulting companies, although they're having their issues now as well. So like, I don't think people assume that there is someone that knows better than them, probably in generally, but let me rephrase that. People assume, like most other things, that you can buy knowledge because, like, what is my best, CRM, what is my best ERP, what is my best whatever it may be, and just take the best, buy that, and that's done. But we're basically living in a world where things are just being written. So there's no solutions that's like, oh, call this company and they'll get it done. Because maybe the thing that you need, AI is not where it should be, and it's useless for you. So the only way I would suggest people is like, be on top of whatever is happening in the world. So if you can, obviously you should use AI in the sense of like the general purpose agentic tools like a ChatGPT, Claude is whatnot, as much as you can, for sure. And just be on top of how things are progressing, because they are progressing very, very fast. But at the same time, other things are very slow. What I mean by that is, if you live in the bubble of AI, which is mostly in Silicon Valley, which is mostly in San Francisco, actually, right now, a lot of people are serving the AI universe with AI. So basically, we are also a tool for AI agents. So like, the more things that happen in that world, the more we all benefit. But the further you are away, you can see that a lot of these things, the benefits have not trickled down to the tire company. Like, majority have not trickled down yet. But things are moving at a very fast speed. So it's like, oh, it's not like, oh, I don't need this, let's forget about AI because it's useless to us. And I've said this historically, and I've seen people, it's like they try something, oh, this is garbage, it doesn't like do what I want it to do, I'm never using this again. And I think that's a wrong way to do it, because things do change really fast. In 3 months it probably will work really well. Why I say this is because, one, it's moving, but two, if your competitor, and you certainly have a competitor, whatever you're doing, is on top of these things, when there is an AI feature, maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't exist now, but when it becomes, if they have that or are using it and you are not, they will exponentially be better than you. It will compound how much more they can get done or be more productive than you can, and you will be left sort of, quote unquote, in the dust. And so, not an exact answer to your question, but I would suggest, which is hard for the tire owner company person, but definitely should be on top of it as much as they can, in the forms that they can. So however they consume information, however they test these things, they should be. Not to say they should not call Infinum, maybe they can. But the question is, for the tire company, is the time now, or is it 6 months from now, or is it 3 months from now, or was it already yesterday and they're late? It's hard to tell for a specific vertical where you are. And I say this because, like, for coding, I don't know if you've seen the graph. So big tech being, Google, Facebook, all these large companies, generally defined as big tech. If you looked at the number of employees that were added every single year, it was growing every single year. So new employees, like the number added was growing, not just like the number hired. So like, if someone was hired and someone was fired and added, that was just like added to zero. And then on top, it was growing every single year. Then it dropped when it was the large layoffs, whenever it was a few years ago. Now, for the last 3 years, it's been almost zero. So for the last 3 years in all of big tech, it's been, the number of people in are in. There's no net new people. Meaning, if someone leaves, they'll replace them, but it's basically just there.
Yeah, I think,
Go ahead.
the famous, or like the example that reached the headlines was Klarna. The Klarna CEO was very.
They rolled back
out and
on that,
about,
though. Did you see that? They rolled back.
I did not.
They rolled back on that. Yeah, they're like, oh, AI is not there yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, but just for context, so
Yeah.
they announced this, that they were not going to add more people. They're just going to naturally see it, natural attrition. Basically, try to do everything with AI, let people stay, start measuring revenue per head as the key, like, benchmark, and then let people just, quit when they want to quit, but then it will not rehire for those positions.
So
I mean,
that part I wasn't talking about. So like, good that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm glad you finished that. The part they rolled back
Yeah.
on, they said they're like a fire all their support. It's going to be all AI.
Yeah.
They rolled back on that. It's like, oh, like we can do a lot with AI internally. We use AI for support as well, but we also have humans as well because it's not there. So it does augment people, make them more productive, but it's not a full-on replacement for sure.
Yeah, no. So I was referring to their kind of like culture that they're changing, this AI first culture, and we have, there's all these CEO memos. You have the Shopify memo, that you need to, if you want to bring on a new employee, you need to motivate why this job could not be done with AI first. And I think there was a Microsoft layoffs a couple of weeks ago, and they attributed it that 30% of the code base at Microsoft now is written by AI. So I mean, it's definitely moving in that direction, which kind of comes to the kind of like darker, I guess, part of this conversation. Was like, I mean, when you have agents, I think a lot of people's like, what type of jobs are going to be augmented versus replaced? Do you have any thoughts on those?
So sure, yeah. I was just gonna finish up on that where like,
oh yeah, go for
the
it.
coding one. No, I'll get to that. I don't want to talk about the topic carpet anymore. Whereas like coding is one where it's very useful, and so you can see that basically if flatlining in the amount of people that are being hired there. Not that there's not more jobs. They're generally jobs. Like we're hiring, other people are hiring as well. But like on net, there's less that exists versus the tire company, right? So it's like, where is AI? And AI is really good at coding. And that happened to be, it wasn't on purpose, but he found out it's actually really, really good at that. So that's where it started. The bad ones, again, the ones that are most effective are generally support. That is like the number one. It seems that people argue that sales will be. I'm actually a believer that a lot of the sales job will be augmented, but actually because of, if everyone has the power of having an AI SDR or a sales representative, then the value of them reaching out goes to zero. So what that actually means is like, if every company is a competitor to Infinum has infinite AI spamming me to sell me, I'm not going to answer any of those calls or any of those emails because like, this just like, there's just so many that there's no value. So then in that scenario, I think like an in-person sales like actually makes sense because like I will actually now reply if you sit in a car or on a plane and come to me. And so I think a lot of the things that happened in society historically will happen with AI as well, where it's like on one side where you're either going to be super artisanal, might not be the best for sales, or super high volume. It's the same thing with food. Like you'll go to McDonald's or go to like a Michelin star restaurant. You have the
I
two
like
ends
to
of
say
that.
that you're either a Wonder Bread factory or you're an artisanal baker.
Exactly.
Like,
and I think artisanal bakers still exist, like even with AI and AI robots. Like I believe that there is a market for artisanal bakers because you will still want, it's like, this one actually a human made, like in that sense, right? You want that. And the same thing with sales, like, oh, so you need where there's that feeling or there's a lot of empathy or you actually want a human to interact with. Like a lot of people go to a restaurant because of the waiter, because of the bartender, because of the, not the specific person, but because there is a person to interact with and you want to interact with the person, right? And so those things are, I believe in the long run will still exist. I'm not saying that there won't be a AI that'll do that. Surely will. And people use, I think it was, what was the numbers? I think like a human companion is the number one use case for ChatGPT right now. And so that could be also like a psychologist, a psychiatrist, sorry. And so you can talk to them. But I would bet that if you had the time and the means that you'd still go to a human, you would still go to a human to talk, like psychotherapist, right? Versus that. And so there will certainly be a market for that as well. So basically, where you want a human interaction is something that will become even more valuable if you are the best, like if you are in the top in what you do. And the other thing is, as we talked about earlier, so even in coding right now, so you'll delegate the simple tasks and even do something more complex, but the actual thinking, the large view of the architecture of what you're trying to build, And also, people don't think about this very often. Agents really don't do anything net new. Like net new, they don't do creative, coding, whatever. So the product that we're building right now, so we're building infrastructure for agents. A lot of things we
Yep.
built ourselves. Agents can help with, oh, now that I've broken down to this little task, it can help me do that. It can help me fix the code and whatever. But if you're going to send it out to go do the whole thing on its own, it actually can't do that. What it can do is a copy of Airbnb, because Airbnb already exists.
Yep.
And so if you look at
Yep.
all the designs and the templates, you will not see a new creative. Like, you're a creative, you can see just by your style. And so like, it's very hard for me to believe, or what I've been seeing, that you will see net new art. It can be decomposed, but you can actually see a theme that they're doing, and it's not a new thing. And those things are still human, as far as I know. So the agents basically,
Yep.
and I don't know when they surpass that, but for now, it's like, what have humans done? We can replicate that to various degrees. But net new is something that they don't do. So can you do something on the forefront of creativity, whatever that might be, or something that needs empathy or human or very, very long, deep thinking to be able to create something? Is, I'm being ambiguous, but I mean, those are the traits that AI is not good at.
No, I mean, I think I agree with everything you just said. I just gotta. We need to move on for the next session. The production team let me know that there's a lot of viewer questions.
Okay, cool.
There's a lot of people
Awesome.
online that want to ask you questions. So,
Sure.
if you don't mind, let's go.
Go
So
ahead.
here's a question from Alex, who asks, can you run agents in parallel to split a large problem down into smaller, more defined problems, potentially having them integrate with one another to solve collaboratively? That's a
So
good,
that's something
good
that people
one.
are working on, and might work now, might not. So like, we have even a protocol that came out recently, was called A to A, agent to agent, where you can basically have one agent that can talk to other agents to do that. So in essence, the idea is, yes, like that is the idea, even though it might not be perfect at the moment, where you can sort of define something and then the agent will break it down into multiple and do that. I don't think that, subjectively, I don't think that works really well yet in practice, but that is definitely where we are trying to get to. Yeah.
Yeah, now, and to add to that, I've been trying, I mean, we can leave that in the notes, but I've been seeing some tools now where you have kind of like 2 or 3 different roles. So you have like a product manager agent, or you have a creative copywriter agent and a designer agent, and then they instruct each other to design websites or marketing materials,
Yeah.
those kind of things.
But I believe the question was more in the sense of like the context. So because it can't do something very large, can it like break it down into chunks and do that? And so I think to have that at production level that works really well, I think we're not there. I think you as a human still have to do all those things and get that. But yeah, that's definitely where we're going. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see that like very soon be a way of work.
Thanks for that one. Next question comes from Pavel. What do you think is the most common misconception about AI agents that businesses should watch out for?
Most common misconception. So the most common misconception might end up being true, but like in the sense of, I think people also very aggressively think, the ones that believe in AI agents, that it will completely replace people. I think the quality of the work they still do is really lacking, and it's not there. So I strongly believe in a world where it is definitely augmenting. So you as a human will do that, but completely replacing even a section of work. So if you give it a full end-to-end task, my criteria of quality, I've never seen it live up to that. So no matter what it was. So I don't think that we're in a place for that. I think that's the biggest misconception, that it's going to do that. Essentially, can an agent go out and solve a whole problem? And if people are sort of tooting the horn that is there, or that it's about to be here, I think that's a bit more out than people actually perceive.
When so follow-up question. So when you say far out, is that 5 years, 10 years,
I don't know. I don't know. So
No,
that
okay.
it's really hard to say, just because, and when we talked about this earlier, it's like, how fast are these things evolving? So there's two ways that these agents become more useful. And so one is the models itself. and the other is the tools that the modelers have. And I also add things like deep research and whatnot as tools, because the fundamental model, the LLM hasn't changed, but it's how it can work with the world. And I think those two things, as they progress, we get more and more out of it. And so how fast do both those two things progress? That's how fast these things change. And it's very hard to tell how fast they will progress.
Gotcha. Next question from Cindy. What are some underrated use cases for AI agents?
Underrated use cases. I have to think about that. What are underrated use cases? Underrated use cases. Oh, so I don't know if it's underrated, but I haven't used it till quite recently. It is to interpret the text that I'm going to send out. So I'm sending out an email, and then I give the agent, if you were X person, Y person, this, I give as much context. How would you interpret this email? Like, what emotional effects? Like, does it come off strong? Does it come off demanding? Does it come off soft?
Yeah.
Like, what do you understand from this? And so using that to understand what the other person will read from that is something that I only recently have done. And I do that with all important communication right now. It's like, what does a person understand? And I also, when a person sends me an email, verify that what I understood, the agent also understood. It's like, did I understand this correctly? And then I send to the agent, what did you understand? And then we try to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's my favorite way to use ChatGPT. I have like virtual assistants that model different like authors or stuff, and then I have them kind of like proofread what I'm receiving or what I'm about to say. Like, hey, am I coming up passive aggressive here?
Yeah.
And
It's like, I don't
it
want to do
always
that.
says yes, so then I need to change it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's actually everything that we've gotten to. The hour, I was like thinking in the beginning, it's like, oh yeah, this is going to be a long time, but we're already at the top of the hour actually. So we need to wrap up. So final question, which is kind of like a staple question of this podcast, which is called Delivered. So in wrapping up, so what's the one thing that you have delivered in your career that you're most proud of?
So I was going to actually do a trick one on that, because I saw that the tagline of Infinum was like never stop. And so I don't think I've delivered the best of my career or life yet. Like, in all honesty. So I've done great things. I created a company, sold a company, created another one, had a child, which is probably one thing that you can probably, it's really weird when you have a kid.
I think I heard something in the background.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, probably. Yeah. So the 1.5-year-old, which is great. And having another as well. And when people say, oh, the kid's the best thing I've ever done, I kind of understand when they say that now. But as far as career arc, everything that I've done and my partners have done throughout their career, everything's built up to this point. And I think that we are on the verge of bringing something actually quite important to the world. I know a lot of people say this, but fundamentally, we plan to be the home of run everything that agents actually do in the future, which is quite large. And so I think that is the thing that we're hoping to deliver. So don't know if it's an acceptable answer, but that's the one I came up with.
Sure is. So for people who want to know more about you, where can they find you?
So to find me, LinkedIn, Twitter, or X, if they call it right now. So Ivan Burazin, both like first name, last name. Also, like Daytona.io is the website. You can check out our GitHub. Anyone that's wants to use Daytona as well as open source, you can do that. We have a Slack channel for the community is there, and I'm also in there, so you can DM me in there. So basically, on the socials, you can find me in our Slack and the website, GitHub. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, this has been great, Ivan. It feels like we could have had another hour or more. It feels like we just scratched the surface.
We didn't get into the dark stuff, so that's good.
Well, maybe we'll have you back on to talk about that.
Yeah, sounds good.
So thank you for joining Delivered. Hope you have a good time in Split and a nice trip back to San Francisco.
Thanks so much. Enjoy the conversation. Thanks for having me.
There you have it, folks. Big thanks again to Ivan for taking the time and answering all our questions. Special thanks to all of you who tuned in live and for sending so many questions. We figure out a way to answer them in a blog post or in the notes or those kind of things. Before you're heading out, if you're thinking about implementing AI, because everything that we talked about sounded interesting, you can take a free assessment and see where you're standing on the Infinum website. There you can also download our AI report, which is called Decoding the Digital and AI Revolution, which comes quite handy. It's a cheat sheet for successful AI adoption. If you're interested to learn more about how Infinum can help you on your AI journey, feel free to reach out to stay up to date on the Delivered, subscribe, and sign up to our newsletter at infinum.com/delivered. This has been a live event. It's going to also be a podcast. And thanks for tuning in and have a great rest of your day. Peace.